much. And good morning, everybody. What I'm going to talk you through is the More Than Just a Crisp campaign, which was developed back in 2014 and then went live in 2015. So I'll just set some context and give you the backstory, I suppose, relating to this particular campaign. Tayto has been the #1 crisp and snacks brand in Ireland, and it continues to maintain that position within the marketplace. And this is on the back of some very successful historical campaigns that the brand has run. You might recall some of them. Mr. Tayto ran for election back in 2007 and really captured the imagination of the public. He also launched an autobiography in 2008. And in so doing, he kept Bertie Ahern off the #1 spot on the bestsellers list in the critical Christmas sales period. And then he also launched and helped to launch Tayto Park in 2011, which has been a huge success ever since. All of these activities really kept the brand in the forefront of the Irish consumer's mind. But back in 2010, there were already some signs of decline. And what the 2010 BCG study that had been conducted showed us was that while the baby boomers and Generation Xers felt a real connection with the Tayto brand, he wasn't quite ticking the box with millennials. And what had happened was that people who had grown up with the brand felt that it was no longer relevant to them. And just also to set the scene here, this was in the context of Pringles, Doritos, Walkers, all of these global brands coming into the Irish marketplace and speaking to the young consumer in a way that they hadn't been spoken to before by Tayto. So while Tayto was communicating in relation to elections and autobiographies, they weren't really honing in on that youth audience, and something needed to be done about this. Back in 2014, we went out to pitch and eventually hired Publicis, the creative agency, and asked Publicis to help us to reposition the Tayto brand so that we could create a connection with that youth audience. So what they did was to set about creating some key campaign objectives across marketing communications, across commercial, in order to kind of set ourselves some goals in order to be able to move the needle and really connect with the millennial. They would have spoken to our target audience of 22-year-old males and females and asked them what it was about the brand that they loved. And there was a critical insight that came out of those focus groups where consumers told us that the brand was there for them throughout their lives. Tayto was a brand that they grew up with. It was always present for parties, for communions, Christmas, Easter, and they felt that it was a brand that was like a constant friend to them. And this was a really key insight for us. We thought, well, if Tayto can be a constant friend, we need to bring that thinking to life. And that was the thinking that informed the platform for More Than Just a Crisp, our new campaign. We set about creating this campaign looking at key deliverables and what we needed to hone in on. And one of the key deliverables was creating relevance with that 20 to 22-year-old audience. We needed Tayto to speak to them in their language. We also needed to drive engagement, and what would be critical in this area was social media and the conversation that we would have with our target audience through all of the social platforms. So, social media was something that Tayto was already doing very well, having already established Mr. Tayto's Facebook page. And I'm not sure if many of you would be aware, but Mr. Tayto is the #1 FMCG brand in Ireland in terms of its Facebook presence with over 275,000 fans. So we absolutely had to keep them at the centre of any of our social media communications. We also then needed to maintain loyalty with existing consumers because on one hand, we're trying to reposition ourselves, talk the language of the youth audience, but at the same time, not alienate the older cohorts, people who had been buying our brand for many years, and indeed the people who are delivering our market share in terms of volume protection. So it was critical that we protected that particular audience. And then obviously we wanted to regain market share. We had started to lose market share in the first quarter of 2014. And this is what had prompted us to develop a new campaign in order to regain that share. Another objective was driving brand affinity. So it wasn't sufficient that people would engage with our brand, enjoy our advertising, but they had to come back to the brand again. And we would seek to do this and to drive them back to the brand by making the brand entirely relevant to them in their everyday lives. And then in terms of advertising effectiveness, we sought to measure the effectiveness of the advertising through Red Sea research, which we would have conducted on an annual basis, ensuring that we were protecting propensity to purchase, brand affection, affiliation with the brand, and so forth. So once we'd set about our campaign objectives, More Than Just a Crisp was developed, and Publicis developed a suite of TV ads. They also developed some outdoor advertising to support the TV. And these are examples of the 48 sheets that would have run at the time. So building on the idea of Tayto being a constant friend and being more than just a crisp to the Irish youth market, we told stories. We told stories about Mr. Tayto saving people from potentially embarrassing situations. He was the wingman, the right-hand man who was able to pluck people out of a mortifying situation. And we developed this theme across social as well, where we developed what was called the Talk to Tayto hashtag, inviting people onto Facebook to share their examples of how Mr. Tayto could have saved them from potentially embarrassing situations. And people shared, they really did share. It was quite astounding how they put all of their personal experiences in the public domain, but there you go. There were a number of different strands to this campaign. The first one obviously was the TV, outdoor and digital communications. And we launched with a 6-week activity. And this was a heavyweight activity because the last time Mr. Tayto had been on air was in 2011, and this was in support of Tayto Park. But there'd never actually been a product ad. And this was the first time we were putting the product front and center of a TV campaign. Another facet to the campaign was the launch of our pop-up shop. We wanted to bring the idea of More Than Just a Crisp to life through something experiential. And the pop-up shop allowed us to do this. It was a massive success. We did not estimate how many people would actually engage with this as a platform. We opened the pop-up shop initially for 10 days on Wicklow Street, and the idea was that we would sell Tayto crisp sandwiches and Tayto merchandise, which was otherwise only available through Tayto Park. So we were offering consumers the opportunity to engage with the brand in a way that they had never done in the city centre. Tayto crisp sandwiches were the best seller within this shop. We had queues out the door, people coming in from offices in the surrounding area, students coming in, and some people actually telling us that this was the first time they'd ever had a Tayto crisp sandwich, imagine. So this was just a fabulous opportunity for us to engage with them. We had all of the online websites coming down, doing a piece on it. All the local radio stations wanted to talk to us about it. RTE News came down, filmed a spot, which then aired on the 6-1 News. We could not have imagined the type of coverage that this generated. It was a massive success. Another strand to the activity was the launch of our Ibiza pack. And this was an idea that our agencies brought to us. Publicis in the first instance encouraged us to do an on-pack activity, and then Dynamo, our packaging agency, suggested dropping the Tayto brand name from the front of pack and replacing it with the word Ibiza. This offer was a trip for you and 3 friends to go off to Ibiza, all expenses paid trip to obviously the dance capital of the world. A very aspirational prize for the youth market. As anybody in their 20s will tell you, Ibiza is pretty much a hotspot for that particular age cohort. It was also helping us to address another issue within the marketplace, which was the decline of the impulse product. Impulse, ever since the recession, had been in decline across a vast number of categories. As people became more savvy, were shopping within the multiples, looking for the pricing deals. So this was an opportunity for us to try and drive traffic back to the impulse opportunity and protect our margin, protect our profitability. And then the strands of social media activation ran throughout the entire campaign. So from February 2015 right through until June, we were continuously communicating with our audience across all of our social platforms. We were doing takeovers on relevant websites, College Times, Joe, Journal, all of the usual hotspots for engagement. Because as we all know, millennials are constantly multi-devicing, they're always online. So it was critical that we spoke to them within this particular environment. We exploited all of the social media platforms available to us. As I mentioned already, we are already on Facebook, and we built our Tayto album of shame using the content that people provided to us and the embarrassing situations that they shared publicly. We also used Twitter, and this was more tactical, and it was for real-time engagement. So, for example, when the pop-up shop opened and we had celebrities commenting on their Twitter handles in relation to the pop-up, we were able to respond in real time. And part of the success of our social engagement was the fact that we have an in-house social media manager who's actually in the audience, and she was able to respond immediately each time there was a comment made on social. And I think this was one of the massive learnings from this entire campaign, how critical it is to have somebody in your team who is always online. Some people outsource to agencies. but agencies aren't necessarily always 24 hours, whereas when you have somebody in your team who's absolutely committed to communicating with your audience on a continual basis, it's hugely valuable, and we're able to exploit that fully. We also have a YouTube channel. We were able to stream out time-lapse videos of the creation of the pop-up shop, and indeed promotional videos to support it. And we ventured into Snapchat, a territory we hadn't been in before. Not many Irish brands had actually delved into Snapchat in 2015. We used Snapchat to really engage with a much younger audience, and our Snapchat stories were massively successful with real, about 2,500 views per story, which I'm told is a pretty good result, and really, really strong engagement with people posting lots of visual representations of the brand as delivered through the pop-up shop. And on to the results. Well, we delivered on our campaign. We delivered on all of our objectives. We had a sales uplift of 10% for the post-campaign period versus prior year. We also managed to drive household penetration, frequency of purchase, and weight of purchase. And these indicators showed us that we were protecting our loyal consumers. These increases delivered over €1 million worth of sales to our business. So not only was it that we maintained our existing and loyal consumers, we actually helped to encourage them back into the category and generated uplift, which obviously was a good news story for us, but also for retailers. We also engaged with the under-28s, which was exactly what we had set out to do from the outset. In fact, under-28s represented the single biggest increase across all age cohorts for our take-home sales. A 30.9% increase across this particular age cohort, which showed that we had done what we set out to do at the very outset. In relation to social media, on Facebook alone, we generated 2.5 million impressions and a 7% engagement rate, which is well over double the standard engagement rate. In Twitter, we generated 500,000 impressions with about 4% engagement rate. So everything was really working for us. We succeeded in capturing the imagination of the youth audience through all of our social interactions. Then when it came to advertising effectiveness, we measured this through Red C. And Red C have something what they call the Red Star Index, where it's a combination of communication, brand impact, brand affection scores, and they roll this up into one score. And we measured ourselves against our key competitors to see how our advertising worked versus our competitors, and we delivered a 12% increase on our score versus them. So the norm would be about 57. We delivered a 64 score. So we were delighted with this result. And then finally, in relation to market share, we managed to increase our market share by 3.3% post-campaign activity. So again, this was another box ticked and something that was critical for our business and critical for us in terms of maintaining growth for the brand. But one of the biggest surprises, I think, throughout this campaign was the success of the pop-up shop. We had not anticipated, as I've said countless times, how engaged people would get with the pop-up shop. And we did a media estimation of the value of the media generated on the back of the pop-up, and it was €925,000, which was astronomical. And actually, this figure is 33% higher than the cost of the entire campaign. So in fact, our More Than Just a Crisp campaign was self-liquidating. I've gone through the campaign very quickly there just to give you some of the key highlights. I hope you've managed to grasp what we were trying to do, and what we set out to do really was to engage that youth audience. We managed to do that. We converted them, and we generated loyalty that has managed to be maintained across the 2015 months of activation and right into 2016. We've maintained our number one position. Consumers still tell us they love the brand, and our role now is to ensure that we future-proof it through more activations that will help to bring that platform of More Than Just a Crisp to the next level. I'm going to leave you now with a little video of our activation in Wicklow Street in 2015.
Awesome idea. It's cool that it's now in Dublin and that anyone around the city can get one for lunch if they're in need of a crisp sandwich.
I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm devastated it's only open for 10 days. You know, it's a shame it's not open longer. I'd come here every day.
It's been a long time since I had a cheese and onion sandwich, so I'm looking forward to trying it. And obviously it goes to charity as well, Simon Community, so that's great as well.
My favourite flavour is definitely prawn cocktail.
Cheese and onion.
Salt and vinegar.
Cheese and onion.
Prawn cocktail's my favourite.
Cheese and onion, all the way.